The sun beat down on the tarmac, reflecting off the gleaming wings of countless aircraft. It was the annual Willow Creek Air Show, a spectacle of roaring engines and daring aerial maneuvers. Families sprawled on blankets, kids clutching miniature airplanes, and veterans stood tall, their eyes twinkling with memories of flight. The air crackled with excitement, a mix of anticipation and the faint scent of jet fuel. A massive C-17 Globemaster sat like a slumbering giant, its cargo bay open for tours. Sleek fighter jets like the F-22 Raptor and the F-35 Lightning II stood poised, ready to demonstrate their incredible speed and agility. But the crowd's buzz centered on the A-10 Thunderbolt II, affectionately known as the Warthog. Its distinctive shape and reputation for close air support made it a favorite among aviation enthusiasts. Food vendors lined the perimeter, selling everything from hot dogs and hamburgers to ice cream and lemonade. The aroma of grilled meat mingled with the sweet scent of cotton candy, creating a sensory overload. A local band played classic rock anthems, adding to the festive atmosphere. Laughter and chatter filled the air as people eagerly awaited the start of the aerial displays. It was a perfect day for an air show, a celebration of flight and the brave men and women who dedicate their lives to the skies. Amidst the throngs of people, a group of 4 young adults stood near the front of the crowd, their laughter echoing a bit too loudly. They were dressed in trendy clothes, snapping selfies with the fighter jets in the background, more interested in their social media presence than the actual aircraft. Their attention soon shifted, however, to an elderly man slowly making his way through the crowd. He walked with a pronounced limp, using a worn wooden cane for support. His face was etched with wrinkles, a roadmap of a life well lived, and his eyes, though aged, held a spark of youthful enthusiasm. He wore a simple, faded denim jacket and a baseball cap that read Vietnam Veteran. "Look at this guy," one of the young men snickered, nudging his friend. "Probably thinks he's going to fly one of those things." The others chuckled, their eyes following the old man as he shuffled closer to the barrier separating the crowd from the runway. They exchanged glances, a silent agreement to make the old man the target of their amusement. They seemed bored with the airshow itself and were looking for a new source of entertainment, finding it in the unassuming figure of the elderly veteran. Their playful jabs were about to turn cruel. The old man, oblivious to their snide remarks, stopped near the barrier, his gaze fixed on the A-10 Warthog. A genuine smile spread across his face, softening the lines etched by time. He leaned heavily on his cane, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. "That's a beautiful machine," he murmured, his voice raspy but filled with admiration. "The A-10. There's nothing quite like it." One of the young women in the group overheard him. "Oh, really?" she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "And what do you know about it, old-timer?" The old man turned, his eyes meeting hers. He didn't seem offended, just a little surprised. "I know it saved a lot of lives," he replied simply. "It's a tough bird, reliable, and it can take a beating and still bring you home." He paused, then added, a hint of pride in his voice. "I've always been partial to the A-10. Seeing it fly again, it's something special." He adjusted his cap, a small, almost shy gesture. He was clearly looking forward to the A-10 demonstration, the highlight of the airshow for him. The young woman's friends joined in, their voices louder now. "Yeah, Grandpa," one of the young men chimed in. "You probably think it just goes BRRT and shoots stuff, right?" He mimicked the sound of the A-10's Gu-8 Avenger cannon, exaggerating the noise and making a comical face. "Bet you can't even name one thing special about it," another added, smirking. "Or tell us what Gu-8 even stands for." They were relentless, their laughter echoing cruelly in the air. They clearly believed the old man was just an out-of-touch veteran who didn't understand the complexities of modern aviation. They assumed his appreciation for the A-10 was based on nostalgia, not actual knowledge. "Leave him alone, guys," the 4th member of the group mumbled, looking slightly uncomfortable. But his protest was weak, drowned out by the others' mocking laughter. The old man remained silent, his expression unreadable. He simply continued to gaze at the A-10, seemingly unfazed by their taunts, though a flicker of sadness crossed his eyes. He knew he couldn't win an argument with them, and perhaps he didn't want to. He just wanted to see the Warthog fly. Suddenly, the air crackled with anticipation as the announcer's voice boomed over the loudspeakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves for the raw power and unmatched maneuverability of the A-10 Thunderbolt II." A hush fell over the crowd as the distinctive shape of the Warthog appeared on the horizon. The engines roared to life, a deep, guttural sound that vibrated through the ground and into everyone's chests. The A-10 taxied onto the runway, its menacing Ju-8 cannon glinting in the sunlight. With a deafening roar, the A-10 accelerated down the runway, quickly gaining speed. It lifted off smoothly, climbing into the sky with surprising agility for such a heavily armed aircraft. The crowd gasped as the pilot executed a series of impressive maneuvers, tight turns, steep climbs, and low passes that showcased the A-10's capabilities. The air show had officially begun, and the A-10's performance was captivating. Even the young adults, momentarily distracted from their cruel game, couldn't help but be impressed by the sheer power and spectacle of the Warthog in flight. The old man, however, was completely transfixed, his eyes following every move with rapt attention. This was what he had been waiting for. The old man's face was illuminated by the reflected sunlight as the A-10 danced across the sky. A small, knowing smile played on his lips. He seemed to anticipate each maneuver, his head tilting slightly as the aircraft banked and turned. He was no mere spectator, he understood the physics and the skill involved in piloting such a machine. However, the young adults, their initial awe fading, resumed their cruel banter, their voices rising above the roar of the engines. "Look at him," one of them said, pointing at the old man. "He probably thinks he could do better." "Yeah, bet he's picturing himself back in the cockpit," another added, rolling his eyes. "Dream on, Grandpa." They grew bolder, their comments laced with increasing disrespect. They were determined to shatter the old man's enjoyment, to remind him, in their minds, of his age and perceived irrelevance. Their words were sharp and cutting, aimed directly at him, hoping to elicit a reaction. They didn't understand the depth of his connection to the aircraft, the years of experience and memories it represented. To them, he was just an old man, easily mocked. But they were about to learn a valuable lesson. Just as the A-10 was about to perform its signature low-altitude strafing run, a maneuver that always drew gasps from the crowd, something unexpected happened. The pilot abruptly pulled up, aborting the run. The roar of the engines died down as the A-10 circled back, flying low over the crowd. A collective murmur rippled through the spectators. What was going on? The announcer's voice, usually so enthusiastic, was now laced with a hint of confusion. "Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we have a slight interruption in the A-10 demonstration. We'll get back to you as soon as we have more information." The A-10 completed a wide turn and began heading back towards the area where the old man and the group of young adults were standing. The aircraft slowed, flying at a surprisingly low altitude, its shadow falling over the crowd. Everyone craned their necks, wondering what was happening. The young adults, momentarily silenced by the unexpected turn of events, exchanged nervous glances. Had something gone wrong with the aircraft? Or was something else going on? The suspense was palpable. The A-10 pilot's voice crackled over the loudspeakers, clear and resonant. "Airshow control, this is Hog 1-1. Request permission to deviate from the planned demonstration." After a brief pause, the airshow control responded, "Hog 1-1, permission granted." "What are your intentions?" "I'd like to dedicate the remainder of this demonstration to a very special guest in the audience," the pilot replied, his voice firm. "I believe he deserves our respect and recognition." The crowd was completely silent now, every eye fixed on the A-10 as it hovered in the air. The young adults shifted uncomfortably, their faces etched with a mixture of confusion and apprehension. They sensed that something significant was about to happen, and they had a sinking feeling it might involve them. The old man, however, stood tall, his gaze unwavering, a hint of anticipation in his eyes. He seemed to know what was coming. The air was thick with tension, the silence broken only by the faint hum of the A-10's engines. "That man," the pilot continued, his voice filled with respect, "is Sergeant Major Robert Thompson. He flew over 200 combat missions in the A-10 during the Gulf War and is a highly decorated veteran. He's a legend in the A-10 community, and I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for his mentorship and guidance." A gasp rippled through the crowd. The young adults stood frozen, their faces pale with shame. They had been mocking a hero, a man who had risked his life for his country, a man who was revered by his peers. Their arrogance and ignorance had blinded them to the truth. The pilot went on, "Sergeant Major Thompson not only flew bravely in combat, but he also helped develop many of the tactics and procedures we still use today. He's a true innovator and a warrior, and it's an honor to have him here today." He paused, then added, "So, with all due respect, I'm dedicating this next series of maneuvers to Sergeant Major Thompson, a true American hero." The crowd remained silent, stunned by the revelation. All eyes were now on the old man, who stood tall, a proud but humble smile on his face. The A-10 roared back to life, its engines screaming as it climbed into the sky. The pilot began a series of breathtaking maneuvers, each one seemingly more daring than the last. He performed a perfect Immelman turn, a barrel roll, and a gravity-defying loop, each maneuver executed with precision and grace. As he flew, the pilot continued to narrate, dedicating each maneuver to a specific accomplishment of Sergeant Major Thompson. This Immelman turn, he announced, is in honor of Sergeant Major Thompson's bravery in leading a daring rescue mission behind enemy lines. The A-10 then performed a barrel roll. And this barrel roll is for his innovative thinking in developing new tactics that saved countless lives. The crowd watched in awe, their eyes glued to the sky. They understood now that this was more than just an airshow demonstration, it was a tribute to a true hero. The young adults, still reeling from their earlier misjudgment, could only stare in silence, their faces flushed with shame. They were witnessing a master class in both aviation and respect, a lesson they would never forget. Each maneuver was a testament to Sergeant Major Thompson's skill, courage, and dedication. The pilot's voice, filled with emotion, continued to resonate through the air. And finally, he announced, as the A-10 performed a low pass directly over the crowd, this low pass is dedicated to Sergeant Major Thompson's unwavering commitment to his fellow soldiers, his loyalty, and his selflessness. As the A-10 soared past, the old man raised his hand in a silent salute, his eyes glistening with tears. The crowd, deeply moved by the tribute, erupted in applause. People cheered and whistled, expressing their gratitude and admiration for Sergeant Major Thompson's service. Among the cheering crowd, the young adults stood apart, their faces etched with remorse. The young woman who had initially mocked the old man was now openly crying, her eyes filled with regret. Her friends stood beside her, their heads bowed in shame. They realized the magnitude of their mistake, the disrespect they had shown to a true American hero. They knew they had to find a way to apologize, to make amends for their behavior. The airshow, once a source of amusement for them, had become a powerful lesson in humility and respect. Sergeant Major Thompson stood silently, his eyes fixed on the A-10 as it taxied back towards the runway. He wiped away a tear, a mixture of pride and nostalgia washing over him. He remembered his own days in the cockpit, the adrenaline rush of combat, the camaraderie of his fellow pilots. It all seemed like a lifetime ago, but the memories were still vivid. The A-10 slowed to a stop near where he was standing. The canopy opened, and the pilot, a young man with a bright smile, climbed out. He walked towards Sergeant Major Thompson, his hand extended in a gesture of respect. "Sergeant Major Thompson," the pilot said, his voice filled with admiration, "it's an honor to meet you, sir. Your service and sacrifice are an inspiration to all of us." He offered a crisp salute. Sergeant Major Thompson returned the salute, his eyes twinkling. "Thank you, son," he said, his voice raspy but strong. "It's good to see the Warthog is still in good hands." He paused, then added with a chuckle, "And you know how to fly it pretty darn well." The pilot grinned, clearly pleased by the compliment. The connection between the two pilots, generations apart, was palpable. They shared a bond forged in the skies, a bond of courage, skill, and dedication to duty. The pilot then turned to the crowd, raising his voice so everyone could hear. "Ladies and gentlemen, Sergeant Major Thompson has agreed to answer a few questions about the A-10 and his experiences. I think we can all learn a lot from him." The crowd cheered enthusiastically, eager to hear from the legendary pilot. The young adults, seizing the opportunity, approached Sergeant Major Thompson, their faces filled with genuine remorse. "Sergeant Major Thompson," the young woman who had been the most vocal in her mockery said, her voice trembling, "we are so sorry for our behavior earlier. We were disrespectful and ignorant, and we hope you can forgive us." Sergeant Major Thompson smiled kindly. "There's nothing to forgive," he said gently. "We all make mistakes. The important thing is that you learn from them." He paused, then added, "And perhaps you'll have a newfound appreciation for the A-10. The young woman nodded, tears streaming down her face. "We do, sir," she said sincerely. "We really do." Her friends echoed her sentiments, their voices filled with humility. They had come to the airshow seeking entertainment, but they were leaving with a valuable life lesson. For the next hour, Sergeant Major Thompson answered questions from the crowd, sharing his experiences and insights about the A-10. He spoke with passion and humility, captivating everyone with his stories of bravery and sacrifice. The young adults listened intently, hanging on his every word, their initial arrogance replaced with genuine respect. He explained the intricacies of the Gu-8 Avenger cannon, its devastating firepower, and its crucial role in providing close air support to troops on the ground. He described the A-10's ability to withstand heavy damage, its redundant systems, and its pilots' unwavering determination to bring their aircraft home no matter the odds. He also spoke about the importance of teamwork, the camaraderie among pilots, and the unwavering support of the ground crews who kept the A-10s flying. He emphasized that aviation was not just about individual skill but about a collective effort, a shared commitment to excellence. The crowd listened intently, absorbing his wisdom and appreciating his service. The airshow had become more than just a spectacle, it had become a tribute to courage, sacrifice, and the enduring legacy of the A-10 Thunderbolt II. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the airshow, the pilot signaled that it was time for him to depart. He climbed back into the cockpit of the A-10, gave Sergeant Major Thompson one last salute, and taxied onto the runway. With a final roar of the engines, the A-10 lifted off, climbing into the sky. The pilot performed one final flyby, dipping the wings of the aircraft in a gesture of farewell. The crowd erupted in applause, cheering and waving as the A-10 disappeared into the horizon. Sergeant Major Thompson watched until the aircraft was out of sight, a sense of peace and contentment washing over him. He had been honored and respected, and he had shared his experiences with a new generation. He knew that the legacy of the A-10 and the values it represented would continue to inspire for years to come. He turned to the young adults who were standing nearby, their faces filled with gratitude. "Thank you, sir," the young woman said, her voice sincere. "You've taught us a valuable lesson today. We'll never forget it." Sergeant Major Thompson smiled. "That's all I can ask," he said. The sun dipped below the horizon, signaling the end of the airshow but the beginning of a new chapter for all who had been there. As the crowd dispersed, Sergeant Major Thompson found himself surrounded by well-wishers, people thanking him for his service and sharing their own stories of loved ones who had served in the military. He patiently listened to each one, offering words of comfort and support. The young adults waited patiently on the periphery, allowing Sergeant Major Thompson to have his moment. When the crowd finally thinned out, they approached him again, their eyes filled with sincerity. Sergeant Major Thompson, the young man who had mimicked the sound of the A-10's cannon, said, his voice subdued, "I want to apologize again for my behavior earlier. It was disrespectful and childish, and I truly regret it." He extended his hand. Sergeant Major Thompson shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, son," he said. "I appreciate that." He looked at each of them in turn, his eyes conveying a message of understanding and forgiveness. "You're young," he said. "You have your whole lives ahead of you. Just remember to respect your elders and appreciate the sacrifices that have been made for your freedom." They nodded solemnly, their faces etched with a newfound maturity. The airshow had transformed them, turning them from thoughtless youths into thoughtful, respectful young adults. Just then, the A-10 pilot, still in his flight suit, approached them. "Sergeant Major Thompson," he said, "would you mind if I gave these young folks a closer look at the Warthog? I think they might appreciate it more now." Sergeant Major Thompson smiled. "I think that's a great idea, son," he said. He turned to the young adults. "Well, what are you waiting for? Let's go take a look at that beautiful machine." The young adults' faces lit up with excitement. They followed the pilot and Sergeant Major Thompson to the A-10, their eyes wide with awe. The pilot showed them the cockpit, explaining the various controls and instruments. He pointed out the Gu-8 Avenger cannon, describing its incredible power and accuracy. He even let them touch the aircraft, feeling the smooth metal and imagining what it must be like to fly such a formidable machine. They asked questions, eager to learn everything they could about the A-10 and its role in protecting freedom. The pilot and Sergeant Major Thompson patiently answered each one, sharing their knowledge and passion for aviation. The young adults were completely captivated, their initial mockery replaced with genuine fascination and respect. As the young adults explored the A-10, Sergeant Major Thompson and the pilot stood to the side, chatting like old friends. They discussed the changes that had been made to the aircraft over the years, the new technologies that had been implemented, and the challenges facing A-10 pilots in modern warfare. The pilot listened intently to Sergeant Major Thompson's insights, valuing his experience and wisdom. He knew that Sergeant Major Thompson's knowledge was invaluable, a treasure trove of information that could not be found in any textbook. "You know," the pilot said, "I've always admired your ability to stay calm under pressure. I've heard stories about your bravery in combat, your ability to make split-second decisions that saved lives." Sergeant Major Thompson smiled modestly. "I just did what I had to do," he said. "We all did. We were a team and we relied on each other." He paused, then added, "The A-10 is a great machine, but it's the pilots and the ground crews who make it truly special." The pilot nodded in agreement. He knew that Sergeant Major Thompson was right. It was the human element, the courage and dedication of the people who flew and maintained the A-10 that made it a legend. The bond between the two men, forged in the skies and strengthened by mutual respect, was unbreakable. As the last rays of sunlight faded, Sergeant Major Thompson, leaning on his cane, began to make his way towards the exit. The young adults walked beside him, their conversation animated and respectful. They were no longer the same thoughtless youths who had arrived at the airshow earlier that day. They had been transformed by their experience, humbled by their encounter with a true American hero. They reached the parking lot where Sergeant Major Thompson's ride was waiting. He turned to the young adults, a warm smile on his face. "Well, I guess this is goodbye," he said. "It's been a pleasure meeting you all." The young woman who had initially mocked him stepped forward. "Thank you, Sergeant Major Thompson," she said. "You've taught us a lesson we'll never forget. We promise to honor your service and to respect all veterans." Sergeant Major Thompson nodded, his eyes twinkling. "I know you will," he said. He climbed into the car, waved goodbye, and drove off, leaving the young adults standing in the parking lot, their hearts filled with gratitude and respect. The airshow had ended, but the lessons they had learned would last a lifetime. Sergeant Major Thompson left with his head held high, knowing he had made a difference.